Some believed that I was a single mother because I had given birth to a child outside marriage. Others knew that the child was not biologically mine, but still believed that I was foolish for taking responsibility for her. After completing my studies, I remained in Bukavu for 2 more years so that my daughter could finish primary school and receive her certificate. I did not want to leave before she had completed that stage of her education. Once she received her certificate, I took her to stay with my parents and other relatives in the village. After making sure she was settled, I moved to Goma. I had thought about bringing her with me and sending her to school in the city, but that would have been very difficult financially. School fees and the general cost of living were higher in Goma than in the village. Some friends had encouraged me to come to Goma, and I believed I might find better opportunities there and continue teaching. At the time, I was already teaching at a small school. My daughter remained in the village, where living with relatives was less expensive. She is now in 7th grade. Before our separation in 2024, my daughter and I had spent many years building a life together in Bukavu. When I first left my family home and took responsibility for her, she was 6 years old. I was still a student. She needed 1 more year before beginning primary school, and during that period, my father supported both of us. He paid many of our expenses and helped provide for our needs. During my first and second years of graduate studies, I continued depending heavily on my father's support. By my 3rd year, however, our situation had become more difficult. My daughter had started school, our expenses had increased, and I realized that I needed to earn money myself. Since I already had the ability to teach, I decided to look for work. I found a part-time teaching position that required me to work 2 days a week. At that time, my daughter and I lived in Bukavu, in the Kahale neighborhood, near the Higher Technical Medical Institute of Bukavu, or ISTM. We lived there because a primary school was nearby, making it easier for my daughter to attend school. My own school, the Higher Institute of Pedagogy, or ISP, was located in town, so I had to travel from Kahale to attend my classes. Our home was small and enclosed. It was built from wooden planks, and tarpaulins had been used as walls to provide shelter. There was also a tarpaulin at the entrance. We lived in a compound with our landlord and several neighbors, including other students, because the area was close to the university. The rent was $20 per month, but we could not pay 1 month at a time. Before moving in, we had to pay 6 months of rent in advance. At the end of each 6-month period, we had to pay for another 6 months if we wanted to continue living there. During my first and second years, my father helped us with our expenses. Once I reached my 3rd year and began earning money, I started paying the rent myself. I eventually moved us from the first place where we had lived because the conditions were uncomfortable. The earlier house had neither running water nor electricity, and we had to use flashlights at night. The new place was more comfortable and had electricity, although there was still no running water. We had to fetch water from elsewhere for cooking, washing, and our other daily needs. The condition of the toilets was also very important to me. One reason I had moved from our previous home was that the toilet situation was uncomfortable. For me, safe housing means living in a clean, well-maintained place. Before choosing a house, one of the first things I consider is whether the toilets are clean. I also believe a comfortable home should have electricity and running water. We shared the toilets and showers with 5 households. Everyone had responsibilities, and we followed a cleaning schedule. Each household had an assigned day to clean the shared toilets and showers. Although the house was not perfect, raising my daughter in that environment was not a bad experience. She was surrounded by good people, and the environment encouraged her to take her education seriously. From a young age, she understood the importance of studying and working hard. She performed well in school and consistently ranked among the top 5 students in her class. My daughter also became accustomed to my daily routine. On Sundays, I sometimes took her with me when I went to tutor children from wealthier families. While I was teaching, she sat nearby with her notebook and completed her own schoolwork. She was like a little student alongside the children I taught. I was rarely at home for long periods because I often returned from school in the evening. Even after arriving home, I still had many responsibilities. My daughter had only one school uniform, so I had to wash it about twice a week to make sure it was clean and ready for school. Because I was always busy with school, work, childcare, cooking, and household responsibilities, I rarely had time for long conversations with the neighbors. Sometimes we talked on Sundays, but those conversations were friendly and never caused problems. If I could have changed one thing about our housing situation, I would have changed the quality of the house itself. Because it was built from wooden planks, rats were a constant problem. I wished we could have lived in a stronger, more permanent, and more secure house. Still, that home became the place where my daughter and I lived together until I completed my studies and she completed primary school. As my daughter grew older and began attending school, our financial responsibilities increased significantly. Her school fees were about $40 to $45 per term. At the school where I was studying, my own tuition was at least $100 per term. In addition to those education costs, I had to pay $20 in rent every month. When I added everything together, my tuition, my daughter's school fees, rent, food, clothing, school supplies, transportation, and our other daily needs, the expenses became overwhelming. During my first and second years of graduate studies, my father continued helping us. He supported my education and helped me care for my daughter. However, by the time I reached my third year, my daughter was also in school, and the money my father provided was no longer enough to cover all our needs. He had not abandoned us, but there were now too many expenses for him to manage alone. I understood that I also needed to take responsibility and find a way to contribute. Because I already knew how to teach, I began looking for teaching opportunities. I found a part-time position that required me to work 2 days a week and paid me $50. That income helped me contribute toward our rent, school fees, food, clothing, and other expenses. I also traveled into the city to tutor children from wealthier families. I often did this on Sundays. Sometimes I took my daughter with me. While I taught the other children, she sat nearby with her notebook and worked on her own lessons. She watched what I was doing and became interested in studying. Sometimes, when I was still a student, she even wanted to help me correct my papers. Balancing my studies, teaching, tutoring, household work, and motherhood was not easy. I had very little time for myself. My focus was on completing my education while also making sure my daughter completed hers. At that stage of my life, I did not know about other opportunities or training programs that might have helped me increase my income. I believed that I first needed to finish my studies and help my daughter complete primary school before I could begin focusing on building a better future for myself. Now that I have completed my studies and my daughter has finished primary school, I have more freedom to think about my own development. I have begun participating in training courses and looking for opportunities that may help me improve my life. Before, I could not do that because almost all my time was divided between my studies, my work, my daughter's education, and our daily survival. For many years, I did not think about having a relationship or finding a man who could help me carry these responsibilities. My priority was raising my daughter and making sure she received a good education. I believed that children learn by observing the adults around them, so I wanted to set a good example for her. I wanted her to see commitment, responsibility, perseverance, and the importance of education. At that time, I did not think about having a man in my life. Now, however, I am beginning to think about the possibility because I am an adult. But while I was raising my daughter and studying, relationships were not my focus. I depended on myself and remained committed to the responsibility I had accepted. Being an adult without a partner brought challenges. Some colleagues and other people questioned my decision to care for a child who was not biologically mine. They would ask, "How can you take care of a child who is not yours?" Those comments were deeply painful. I experienced humiliation because of the responsibility I had taken on, and some of those words stayed with me. Even so, I chose not to dwell on what people said. I relied on myself and continued focusing on raising my daughter. Because I had to attend school, teach, tutor, and look for money, I could not always remain at home with her. During those times, I relied on people in our community. We had good neighbors, and our landlord was also a good person whom I trusted. When I needed to leave, I could allow my daughter to stay with them until I returned. Their presence gave me some reassurance because I knew she was not completely alone. There were also times when my responsibilities as a mother had to come before school and work. One of the most difficult moments was when my daughter became sick. She was vomiting and had diarrhea, and I could not continue with my normal activities while she was in that condition. I stayed home with her for an entire week and cared for her until she recovered. I treated her at home and bought the medicines she needed. I gave her vitamin B6, zinc, and oral rehydration solution to help with the vomiting, diarrhea, and dehydration. During that period, I chose to remain beside her rather than return immediately to school or work. I informed my supervisor that my daughter was ill and that I needed to stay home for a week to care for her. I wanted them to understand that I was not absent without a reason. Because I communicated with my supervisor in advance, I would not say that I lost income or missed an opportunity during that period. I returned to my usual responsibilities only after my daughter had recovered. Experiences like that showed me how difficult it is for a mother to balance education, work, and childcare without consistent support. Affordable childcare would make a significant difference for women carrying these responsibilities. When children are still young, working mothers need affordable daycare centers, nurseries, or other safe childcare services where they can leave their children while they study or work. For me, every decision involved responsibility. I had to think about my daughter's school fees, my own tuition, our rent, food, clothing, transportation, and her health. I had to study while helping her study. I had to work while making sure she was safe. I had to continue building my future while protecting hers. The responsibility was heavy, but I continued because I had made the decision to care for her. Once I accepted that responsibility, I remained committed to it. One of the greatest challenges I faced while raising my daughter was learning how to balance caring for her with my education and work. Because I was responsible for her, I could not always make decisions based only on what I needed. I also had to consider her safety, health, and well being. There were times when I had to leave the house to attend school, teach, tutor children, or look for ways to earn money. Since I could not always take my daughter with me, I depended on people around us. We had neighbors whom I trusted, and our landlord was also a good person. When I needed to go out, I could leave her with them until I returned. Their support was important because I did not have a partner helping me care for her. Although the responsibility was mine, there were moments when I needed other people to watch over her so that I could continue studying and working. However, when my daughter became sick, I could not leave her in someone else's care. One day, she became seriously unwell. She was vomiting and had diarrhea. Her condition required my full attention, and I knew I could not continue with my normal activities while she was suffering. I stayed home with her for an entire week. During that week, I did not attend school or continue with my usual responsibilities. I chose to remain beside her until she recovered. I cared for her at home and bought the medicines she needed. Because she had diarrhea and was vomiting, I gave her vitamin B6, zinc, and oral rehydration solution. It was not easy, but I understood that caring for her had to come first. I informed my supervisor that my daughter was sick and that I needed to remain at home with her. I did not want anyone to think that I had stopped attending my responsibilities without an explanation. I made sure they understood why I would be absent for a week. Because I informed my supervisor in advance, I would not say that I lost money or missed an opportunity during that period. I was able to return to my usual activities after my daughter recovered. Still, the experience showed me how difficult it can be for a mother to balance work, education, and childcare. When a child becomes sick, a mother may have to stop everything else. She may have to miss school, stay away from work, or give up an opportunity because the child needs her. For mothers raising children without partners, these decisions can be even more difficult because there may be no one else available to share the responsibility. The kind of support that would have helped me most was affordable childcare. Working mothers and mothers who are still studying need safe daycare centers, nurseries, and other childcare services where they can leave their young children while they work or attend school. Such support would allow mothers to continue building their futures without neglecting their children. They would be able to work knowing that their children were safe and being cared for. When children are still very young, they need constant attention. A mother cannot simply leave a young child alone and go to work. Without affordable childcare, many mothers must depend on neighbors, landlords, relatives, or anyone they trust. Others may be forced to remain at home, even when they need to earn money. For me, motherhood meant making choices according to my daughter's needs. When I needed to study or work, I looked for people I trusted to care for her. But when she became sick, I stayed beside her. I chose my daughter because her health and recovery were more important at that moment. Only after she became well did I return to my education, work, and other responsibilities. After everything I have experienced, I believe that women who are raising children alone need greater support. A mother may have the courage and determination to continue, but courage alone cannot provide food, pay school fees, create employment, or meet every need of a child. Single mothers need opportunities that can help them become financially independent. They need access to work, training, and income-generating activities so that they can support their children and build stable lives. Sometimes, Organizations provide small amounts of assistance. That support can help for a short time, but it does not always create a lasting solution. A mother may receive money or food today, but once it is finished, she returns to the same difficulties. For me, sustainable support would mean helping women develop activities that allow them to continue earning an income. If a woman receives training and the resources to begin a small business, she can use that opportunity to support herself and her children over time. I already have activities that I do. I am a teacher and I also make donuts and cakes. However, the income is not enough. My teaching salary is limited, and since the war, business has become more difficult. People do not buy donuts as often as they did before because many families are struggling to meet even their most basic needs. Before the war, my donuts sold more easily. Today, people have less money. Businesses have closed. Organizations have stopped operating, and many economic activities have slowed down. Even when I prepare donuts and take them to the shop near our home, they may not sell as they once did. Still, I continue because I do not have another choice. I have responsibilities. My daughter is studying, and every month I send $20 to help pay her school fees. At the beginning of each school year, I also buy her uniform and school supplies. I earn approximately $70 from teaching. From that income, I must support myself and continue providing for my daughter. Because the salary does not last until the end of the month, I make donuts to earn money for transportation and other daily expenses. I also make cakes when I find customers. If someone asks me to prepare a cake for a birthday or another celebration, I accept the work. I advertise through Facebook and WhatsApp and tell friends and other people that I make cakes. These activities help, but I would like the opportunity to develop them further. With greater support, I could expand what I already know how to do and create a more stable source of income. I believe that women should be supported according to their abilities and the activities they are already trying to build. Assistance should not only respond to an immediate need, it should help a woman become independent and continue providing for her family after the support has ended. Education is also very important. My own journey taught me the value of continuing to study despite difficulties. I completed my education while raising my daughter, working, teaching, tutoring children, paying rent, and managing our daily needs. There were many reasons I could have stopped. I had responsibilities from a very young age. I did not experience childhood and youth in the same way as many other people because I was already caring for a child. I had to think about food, clothing, school fees, housing, and the child's future. There were nights when I did not sleep because she was crying. There were days when I became tired in class because I had spent the night caring for her. When she became sick, I stayed home and missed my activities so that I could look after her. There were also times when I did not have enough money. Sometimes I asked my father for help. When he could not help, I looked for other solutions. I taught, tutored the children of wealthier families, requested advances on my salary during emergencies, and reduced my own needs so that my daughter could have what she needed. Despite all of that, I continued my education until I finished. That experience taught me that difficulties do not necessarily mean that a person must abandon their goals. It is important to remain focused and continue moving forward. I also want my daughter to continue her education. She is now in secondary school, and I want her to go further than I have gone. I want her to grow, learn, and become someone who can contribute to her own life and to society. For me, raising a child is not only about providing food and clothing. It is also about education, guidance, affection, discipline, and preparing that child for the future. My daughter is not biologically mine, but I have cared for her since she was very young. I learned how to understand her behavior, recognize when she was sick, provide for her needs, guide her education, and support her growth. She believed that I was her biological mother until she was older. Even after learning the truth, she continued to see me as her mother. Sometimes she calls me mom, and sometimes she calls me by my name. The affection between us remains because of the years we have spent together and everything we have experienced. Being a mother to me is not limited to giving birth. Motherhood begins with affection, but it is also the formation of a generation. A mother helps shape the person a child will become. She guides, teaches, protects, sacrifices, and prepares the child to become responsible and useful in society. That is what I have tried to do for my daughter. Although I did not give birth to her, I accepted responsibility for her. I cared for her when she cried at night. I learned how to wash her clothes and care for her when she was sick. I found ways to feed her when there was not enough. I enrolled her in school and worked to pay for her education. I do not regret accepting that responsibility. The experience made me responsible at a very young age. It gave me knowledge and experience before I had biological children of my own. I learned how children behave when they are sick, how their attitudes can change, how they may lose their appetite, and how to respond to some of their needs. It also taught me courage. I learned that I could manage difficult situations, take responsibility, and care for another person. However, I also want people to understand the challenges faced by women in situations like mine. People sometimes judge without knowing the truth. Some believe that I was a single mother because I had given birth to a child outside marriage. Some rejected or humiliated me because of that assumption. Others knew that the child was not biologically mine, but still believed that I was foolish for taking responsibility for her. They said that I was wasting my time and that the child might grow up and do nothing for me. Those judgments were painful. There were times when I cried because I felt rejected and humiliated, but I continued. I decided not to focus on the people who discouraged me. I remained close to the friends and community members who supported me, encouraged me, and understood that raising a child who is not biologically yours requires courage. I would like people to avoid judging mothers without understanding their experiences. Every woman has a story. Some women raise children alone because they were abandoned. Some face poverty or displacement. Others accept responsibility for children who are not biologically theirs. People should try to understand before making assumptions. To other young women who are raising children under difficult circumstances, I would say, remain focused and look for activities that can help you contribute to the child's needs. Caring for a child is not easy. It requires thought, planning, responsibility, patience, and financial resources. Even small activities can help. A woman can look for work, begin a small business, join a women's group, or participate in a community savings and support group such as an AVEC. These opportunities can help women organize themselves, earn income, and better manage the needs of their children. It is also important not to lose hope. My faith has helped me continue through many difficult experiences. I grew up in a Christian family where we prayed together. My grandmother prayed the rosary. My father read Bible verses, for prayer became part of my life. Today, I continue to believe that difficult situations can change. Sometimes, when I feel overwhelmed, I try to calm myself and remind myself that the situation will not remain the same forever. I have experienced financial hardship, judgment, responsibility from a young age, and the effects of war. I have heard bombs, seen death, left my home because my neighborhood was unsafe, and lived with another family for 2 months. When I returned home, I had to begin again. Life had changed. Food had become more difficult to obtain. Work had become less stable, and the economic situation had worsened. But I continued teaching. I continued making donuts. I continued supporting my daughter. My hope is that life will improve and that I will find opportunities to build a more stable future. I want to expand my activities, improve my income, continue supporting my daughter's education, and eventually build my own family when the time is right. I also hope that peace will return. War changes people emotionally, psychologically, socially, and economically. It disrupts education, closes businesses, limits opportunities, separates families, and forces people to leave their homes. Peace would allow people to work again. It would allow businesses and organizations to reopen. It would allow children to study without fear and families to rebuild their lives. My journey has taught me that, despite difficulties, a person must continue moving forward. There are moments when life becomes overwhelming. There are moments when you do not know how you will provide food, pay school fees, or meet the needs of the people who depend on you. But understanding the situation can help you begin again. I have learned to remain calm, continue working, and look for solutions at every stage of life. I have learned that doing good matters because you never know when you may need the kindness of others. Above all, I have learned that motherhood is not defined only by childbirth. Motherhood is affection. Motherhood is responsibility. Motherhood is sacrifice. Motherhood is education. Motherhood is preparing and forming a new generation. That is what being a mother means to me.
You've been listening to The Archive Speaks, a podcast from the Refugee Archive, a global center dedicated to preserving and amplifying the voices of displaced female head of households. If this story moved you, help us share it. Support our cause by finding us on any social media platform at The Refugee Archive. And join us, because when more of us listen, more of them speak.